Welcome to Season 9 of CX in the Wild, where we venture beyond the ordinary, exploring the untamed edges of experience creation. These are the stories of dreamers and doers, those who craft connections at the crossroads of humanity and innovation. Now, let's join Dennis on the latest journey.
Joe, welcome to CX in the Wild, this impromptu show here in Dubai. You're a very different kind of guest than I normally have. You really, I think, there are some buzzwords I could say about what you do, but really, I think if I could summarize what you do more articulately is you leverage a diverse range of personal experiences that are both academic and I think they are experiences that have led you to personal truths, business truths, and you combine those to create better performance for business people, organizations, internal alignment, both, and I'll say internal for a human, but also internal for an organization. Is that at all even accurate?
Yeah, this is I like the fact that you present the idea of failing as well. It's not just super successes and linear life. It's a combination of tons of experiences that led me to what I'm doing today. And there is definitely the difficulty and hardship of not just being an entrepreneur, but being fully alive. I think this is the thing that trying to be really present in that moment and making an impact. So it is not something that comes just because you have that mission and you want to go there. It is something that came out of a set of setbacks and successes.
It's so nice that in culture around the world, we're starting to recognize the importance of not winning to learn how to win. Joe, let's start out just telling the audience who you are and what's keeping you busy these days.
My name is Joe Sejean. In Arabic, you could say Joe Sejean. I'm a Lebanese citizen, born in France and raised in France. So my story starts with my parents going away from Lebanon in 1976. Because of the Civil War. So it sets the scene, right? High level of stress and complicated life. And then I grew up super happy. My dad was a doctor, medical doctor, and my mom took care of us. We're 5 siblings. Academically average, not knowing what I wanted to do. Ended up doing law school because I didn't know what to do. And translation school. Did all of this with good success. Ended up working in law firms as an intern. And successful because I knew how to write French, English, and Spanish contracts. So I was working in those big firms.
Cool, all right.
Waiting to make it.
I feel so inadequate right now, but go ahead.
I was waiting to pass my bar exam. And I failed twice. I had a third chance, but I quit the job. I stopped the career. And this is where complications started to arise because I hadn't even started. I was an intern. I was already making some money. I had a future in these big firms, but I felt something was not really for me. And then I did my coaching certification 21 years ago, but it was a bit too early. So I created a company that was named Jurist Coaching to coach lawyers. And I had 0 clients, like 0. Not even a friend of my dad told me, I'll do it for free and I'll give you my name. It didn't even happen. So I opened the company, I closed the company after a year. And then I started 4 years of wandering around and not knowing what to do with my life. So I ended up giving classes and as a tutor, it was complicated. Long story short, I ended up a professor in the business school in negotiation. And when I was in the United States, I was looking for an investor in an idea that I had because I wanted to get away from the job of being a professor. I had a phone call from a company here that is called Shadhoop Group. And I'm always a lucky guy. He told me, we found your leaflet on negotiation programs. Are you looking for a stable job? I said, yes. So I came here 17 and a half years ago with my girlfriend at the time. She is still my wife, which is the miracle of life. That's the hardest part of life. We have 3 kids and I'm now an executive coach. I've been doing this for 8 years now on my own account. And what I do essentially is help executives perform and build more robust business and teams by getting away from the focus on transactions and focusing really on relationships. So this is what I do.
The idea of a transactional relationship. It's a transaction is a highly optimized functional relationship. It's where the give and the take, you describe them as they're 2 separate things. And the relationships that you're talking about, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're reaching for emotional connection and I think sustainable relationships, whereas transactions may be very temporary. Is that?
The view of transaction that I chose to have
Yes.
is the legal view of transaction.
Of course, okay, makes total sense.
So a transaction is just a fraction of a moment. So if you think of financial transaction, a sale, is essentially this fraction of time where you exchange your credit card number against something that you just purchased. So the transaction is just a micro moment. And in fact, if you look at how it fits in the world, transactions are a consequence of something. So for example, scoring a goal in football, which is a transaction. You score something and you get a point. That's the consequence of tons of things that happen behind it. The only thing that for me makes, I think, a big difference for my clients is that instead of focusing on the transactions, instead of thinking we need to score a goal and we're going to talk about it all the time, and we need to have KPIs, so we're going to talk about those KPIs all the time, and the metrics, instead of doing this, we're going to prepare people, make sure that they eat well, they sleep well, make sure that they feel good. So instead of talking to them before meeting, for example, Manchester City, which is a big football club in Europe, we're not going to say we need to have a ball possession of 52% before going to the game. We're going to canalize the emotions and the energy of people in order to go and play football, not to score goals. This is essentially what I do, is transactions of consequence. It's essential, like oxygen. So if I shut your oxygen right now, you probably hold for, if I do it right now for 2 minutes max, and after 5 minutes, it's not a good idea to wake you up because the damage will be huge. Think of transactions like oxygen, essential for your survival, but you're not focusing right now on breathing. You're not thinking, I need to breathe. You're not obsessed with your breathing indicator. We're talking right now. You're not like, how am I breathing? Oh, I'm not breathing well. Your encounters and the conversations we have are not about your breathing. However, if I cut it, you die. Your good function is just a consequence of what you do for that. So that's what I work on to get good transaction is essentially acting on emotions, because emotions are the source of our choices and our actions. We are emotional beings. We're not rational beings.
I found that to be more and more true in my recent life. I'll tell you. I find it funny that you describe your success as coming from this place of wandering. And I feel like this last year I've been wandering, and I just keep realizing more and more how much of the world I have wrong. And it shows up everywhere. My keynote speech this past week in Dubai was about perception and reality of customer experience and the markets. And it turns out just about everybody I talk to, including myself, is very off or misguided around what the truth is in a given market versus another market. And I give you an example of what I try to explain is, if I go around the world and I say, hey, tell me what you think Dubai's economy is based on. And what they would say is oil and luxury stuff. And it turns out over 70% of the GDP in Dubai is non-oil. But the rest of the world thinks one thing, but it's not the truth. I'll give you another example. Going the other direction. When I talk to people in different countries here, I say, what do you think drives the U.S. economy? And they'll say big tech and Wall Street. Those are the two things they'll say. And it turns out over 90% of the U.S. is innovation, and the economy is driven by small to medium-sized businesses. And in fact, the big tech companies like Apple, most of their stuff is in Ireland anyway. Right. So it's these perceptions and realities. But unless you're wandering around aimlessly, it's like the truth doesn't really come to you. It's an interesting philosophy.
But if you think of customers, I was in Shadhook, this company that I worked for during 10 years. I was the head of a division called Guest Experience. So we created it. And the most interesting things started to happen when we stopped focusing on a metric and a figure, because this thing was twisting our perception of people. So for example, if I was working, just to give context, I had 4 jobs in this company. The 2 first ones were really successful. The third one was a big failure. I had 17 retail stores to take care of, and I failed from the first second till the moment that they took me out of the job. And it was a disaster, a mega setback for me. And I was used to success in this company. But they didn't fire me. And they told me, we have 650 retail stores and we are not good in customer experience. Can you do something for us? In the beginning, I said, why me? I don't know anything. But they gave me 6 months to build a vision. And I built it and they said, yes, okay, let's create a division for you. The only thing that I asked for is to work for 3 days in the stores every week and then be a division manager 2 days in the office. And they said, yes. So 3 days a week for 4 years, I was in the stores. And what happened to me was exactly what you described as kind of slaps day in, day out, dismantling and deconstructing all the perceptions that I had. And I still have. I'm still completely wrong on so many topics. But at that time, it was super refreshing. One of the things, perception reality, that was twisting our perception was, let's focus on the figures that we have to achieve today. And then let's give KPIs to try to incentivize people to sell pants. And then Dennis comes into the store and I'm looking at him, trying to assess, first of all, if he's the right customer for me, given the unit per transaction and given the average transaction value that I need to achieve.
Yeah.
Then I say, okay, yeah, why not? He looks okay. He has an Apple Watch and stuff, Geox shoes. Good work. But then my incentive is on shirts and you want pants. And you're ready to spend maybe $5,000 in pants. But I don't care, Dennis. I want to sell you shirts because this is how I'm going to achieve my target. And so it created the impossibility to connect with you emotionally as a human being because the targets and the focus that I had was twisting my perception of you, making me incapable to see what was linking us, but making me focus on what I could take from you.
So I spoke to a senior analyst over at Forrester during this last tour, and I was astounded and inspired by her because her basic awakening, or maybe her just genius, is she talks about the inhumanity of numbers and why numbers in businesses mess so many things up. And you're sort of touching on that. But I also think, and to be clear, numbers, she was being clear, like numbers for instance, a call center person is not a number. They're not a KPI. They are a human being. And that's really what you're getting at. The other thing you're talking about that is intriguing me is if you have to be focused on pants and I come in and I want a shirt or vice versa, and we can't connect because you're running the math and the numbers and the KPIs and your performance and your incentives are aligned in a certain way, then it loses that $5,000 sale you're talking about. And there is, I think, a part of every single relationship that is beyond the grasp of our understanding. And what I mean by that is, if you're supposed to sell me pants and I want shirts, you have no control over that. Like, I show up in your radar and I'm just that guy. But when you think about all the things that have to align, like here's what's really like been baffling me recently, and I'm just laughing because I laugh at myself over all these like crazy things. I've been so entirely wrong about so many things. Like here's the first thing I think everyone was wrong about. Leading right up to the pandemic, there was all this like buzz about predictive analytics and data. More data is better, and if you could get the more data you could get, the smarter you could be about predicting the future. And absolutely no one with all the data predicted anything that happened. The following fiscal year, everyone's predictions were wrong. So I thought that was interesting. I was part of that experience. But the things we miss, Joe, everyone talks about the customer journey. You can't be in CX and it not at some point be relevant to the work you do. And what's fascinating is we start at the customer journey touch point where the brand connects. So customer has some sort of awareness, boop, sets a pin on the map. And then we somehow try to plot a journey as though any customer, like as if customers march like ants in one straight line. But even more so, not only do we fail to account for the randomness of the path that starts there, no one maps the path leading up to that event. And if you ask them to, they would say, well, it'd be absurd. Like, how could I really know what was going on in Joe's life a year ago that led him to come in here and buy pants. But looking backwards, it seems like ridiculous. But looking forward makes total sense. And it's just the ironies of life.
Mm-hmm. It is. The thing is, the starting point is maybe also not helping us. It works in a stable world where there is abundance of everything. So where there is abundance of wealth and where the world is stable, that works. We manage stock, it's, supply and demand. But you said it. I mean, the pandemic is just an indicator of how unstable the world is going to become. And you can read any report from the CIA to the World Bank to all the scientific big organisms. Everybody agrees on the fact that the world is going to become more unstable. So how does that work then? Because we cannot function on the same rules. The starting point is saying that Dennis as a client is someone that I need to track because I need to sell him something. So the starting point is, what can I take from Dennis that is going to help me in my business? So back to these days, and this is what I do today with C-level people, is we were scoring bad. I mean, we reached a plateau to what we could sell. We were not managing to grow more. It was an issue. So on the 23rd of a month in retail, like in every business, you more or less know if you're going to go to have your KPIs, to reach your targets. And on the 20th, you already know. And sometimes on the 15th of the month. So we're on the 23rd of the month in the store. I think it was a mental core store. And we tried to change the starting point because we knew that doing what we were doing was not leading us there. So trying to take something from Dennis to help us build the business was not the right starting point. And we said, okay, why not being forbidden to sell? So we cannot sell. Anyway, we're not going to make the target. And the purpose of today is just meeting people. Offered this to the store manager, and I was a salesperson there. And he said, okay, anyway, lost for lost. Let's try. So we said the briefing of tomorrow is not about the figures that we've done the day before, but it's about who did we meet and what did we learn. So we started, and we went to see Dennis, and instead of seeing Dennis and trying to sell him shirts while he wants pants, or the other way around, we started, okay, hey, how are you doing? I'm fine. So, is this a beautiful day for you? Yeah, it's okay. It's a bit crowded and stuff. So what are you doing in Dubai? This day was the best-selling day that we had in the month. So we did this for a week, and this was the best week of the year. And then we tried something else, and I suggested something different. Why don't we try to be intentional about how we want people to feel? So for example, we'd say, if you work with me, Dennis, how would you like your customers to feel today? And you say, I would like them to feel like kings or queens or whatever it is. Yeah. And Joe would say, I like my customers to feel super pampered and super comfortable. How are you going to do this? I don't know. This week was the best week of all the weeks that we've ever done with prohibition to sell. We never sold as much as these weeks because the purpose and the starting point was not, how can I take some money out of the wallet of Dennis and celebrate that? But it was, how can I connect with Dennis and make him feel something? And there is a whole science, I didn't know that at the time, behind emotions, and there is a whole science behind intentions. So there are scientists like Masaru Emoto, who has something very clear about water. He worked on water. I don't know if you know this guy, and if you discover his work, you're going to be blown away. It's how water captures the intentions that people throw at us without even talking. So the first experience he did, I think 30 years ago, took a glass of water and started to think something super positive about that water. Mm-hmm. And then he took another glass of water next to the first glass and he started to think very bad things towards that water. You're very bad. I hate you. You're incapable of anything. Then he took 50 samples of each glass and froze them to minus 23 degrees, which takes 3 hours to get there. The first water did perfectly symmetrical crystals of snow, the typical thing that we know, right? The other water could not crystallize. The structure of the water was messed up, and none of the 50 samples gave any single germ of a crystal. Your body and my body are composed of anything above 90% of what we call structured water, which is H3O2, a molecule. And we function the same way as this glass of water. So if I think, what an idiot you are, Dennis. What do you think you are? You're going to get that in your cells. But if I think, wow, what a great guy you are. I really want to meet you. you probably must have something interesting to say to me. I have that intention towards you. You're going to feel it in yourself. And this is kept in the memory of yourself. So people working in trauma work on this. So what I mean by that is when we started to have an intention towards our customers, we wanted to make them feel something. Not only we connected emotionally with them. And the science on emotions is way bigger. But also they received that. And we didn't have to make any effort. We didn't have to sell. We were just connecting and trying to solve a problem.
Yeah. Some of these old adages, it's better to give than to get. These ideas about doing to others, you want them to do to you, or what goes around comes around. I think people have been trying to tell other humans for a lot of centuries about this. And here we are talking about it. It's going to go out on video, in the algorithms, and people are going to listen to you say, one of the most successful days we had was when we stopped trying to take from our customers and we stopped trying to quote unquote sell, but we decided to just be human. And I think that translates into, in CX, we talk a lot about empathy. And it is an interesting dynamic. I'll tell you that from another amazing woman that I met she's head of a large insurance company. And, maybe that wasn't her. Maybe it was the person I spoke to before that. But here's what they said. Is a company ready for customer experience? Or in this context, is a company ready to activate empathy as an asset? And what she said is, because she's very knowledgeable, she said, answer most of the time is no, they are not. And she said, I can tell you one of the key indicators of whether a company is mature enough to use empathy or customer experience as an asset. She said, all you have to do is look at their profit margin. And she said, if you find a company that has a small profit margin, they are the most likely to become empathetic. And I found that counterintuitive until she explained it. And she said, let's use commodities as an example. You sell dirt. I sell dirt. We can't compete on product or price. There's got to be a differentiator. And it's those who have they're fighting in a market where the competition is so fierce around these numbers, am I getting from people, that they begin to become that. But if they take a step back and they say, you know what, let's just try not selling for a day. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I think you're probably very effective where there is a business or person responsible for a KPI that's like very tight and highly competitive. Because what she also said is companies with big profit margins, big insurance companies, no reason to change. Like they have no incentive to be empathetic.
There are so many elements in what you said that are key to customer experience, to abundance, to well-being. One, scarcity. Abundance doesn't help. Abundance of material doesn't help abundance of interaction. Okay? So when there is an abundance of wealth and material, it doesn't incentivize us to create abundance of interaction. That's the first thing. So take the example of a train. The train is going from, whatever city to Dallas. People are on their phone and they're going to have their day. The train stops in the middle of nowhere. After a few hours, people are starting to cancel their meeting. They understand they're going to lose a contract. They understand that they will not be able to see the graduation of their kid or to pick their kids from school or to go to work or to meet a client, and they have to cancel their day. They're stuck. They cannot get out of the train and walk. This moment of scarcity, of adversity, creates an abundance of interaction. This is where people start to talk to each other. And this is where things are really going into a different dimension. That's an important first aspect. The second aspect is what we call, I don't know if you know the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the foundation of therapy in the 60s, CBT. And there is a CBT triangle. So cognitive behavioral therapy triangle that says essentially something very basic. It says the way you think. So essentially the way I think influences the way I feel, influences the way I act and choose.
Yeah.
And it works in that direction, right? So the way I think influences the way I feel, influences the way I act. Meaning that the way I act and the way I choose to act doesn't come from the way I think. It comes from the way I feel. I can master the way I think somehow. Choose the way I think, yeah? But it's not my thinking that is going to provoke my actions. It isn't. It's the way I feel that is going to provoke my actions. So what do we want? If we want our customers to love our brand, if we want our customers to subscribe to our newsletter, basic stuff. If I want our customers to buy big real estate properties, it's not the data and thinking and the rational process that is going to help them do this. It's the emotional connection that you're going to establish with people. So of course, you need to be at par or to be good in the thinking process. Your product or your explanation of the real estate property needs to be good. But all things compare. If you compare 2 real estate agents or 2 newsletters, 2 websites, or 2 people who sell Rode microphones, it's the emotional connection that you're going to have with the customer, the way the customer feels, that is going to define the choice of recommending, buying, talking about the brand in a good way, buying more, coming back, being loyal, etc.
I could say a bunch of other things right there, but I'm just going to say yes to what you're saying.
Go.
Because I think we're coming up on time here, Joe. It's refreshing to have a conversation about the practicality of emotion and feelings related to the business of experiences. And I just appreciate your coaching us today on the show. And let's assume that you know what you know today. And let's assume that me and you, whatever experts we are on whatever this year, we're going to be much smarter in the future, hopefully. So let's assume you have a belief system leading up to this podcast. What would you predict will be your shift from perception and reality in 2025?
In my own belief system, right?
Mm-hmm. And the reason I ask about your personal belief system is everybody listening is going to have their own, but some of them will have your same belief system. And that is what I think will be genuine about the insight.
It's a process right now, so I'm not exploring. One thing that I'm exploring more and more is the relevance of performance versus robustness. I spent all my life helping people perform better. I think I'm going to shift gradually to help them be more robust, because performance makes people extremely fragile and specialized and focused on one thing and vulnerable in the bad way, meaning dependable on one element. So you perform very well in something. If you're good, extremely good in one sport, for example, you have a minor health problem and your whole career is over. So again, performance works very well in a stable and abundant world, but in a very fluctuant, unpredictable world with a lot of scarcities and disparities, I would say. Robustness is going to win, according to me. And if you look at the species and nature around us, what works is not performance, it's robustness. What lasts. So you need to perform from time to time, but performance, if we see performance as a very narrow path, super specialized and extremely efficient, robustness is going to enlarge the path and therefore have less performing moments, but more latitude to adapt and avoid collapsing. And I think this is, in 2025, this is probably what I want to focus on a bit more, because to me, it makes more sense. But I think to human beings, it also makes more sense. But that's just an intuition so far. I don't know if it answers your question.
It 100% answered my question. Thank you so much for taking the time to come down and be on CX in the Wild today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring the wild world of experience creation with us. Each episode offers a new perspective, a fresh story, and another step into the unknown. Stay curious and keep listening. You never know what you might discover next.